Before we get to straight football talk, let's discuss ownership. John extensively covers the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are going through an ownership change right now, at least it appears. I spend a lot of time around the Twins. Their team is up for sale. We could have dramatically different kinds of owners running two of the major sports franchises in Minnesota. Let's talk about what the Wilfs have learned and what they've brought to the table as owners. We'll also talk about the running backs. Maybe the Vikings getting a compensatory pick in the draft, which would be a big deal. Kwesi not signing his deal yet. The nature of modern All-Star games, how it affects the Vikings All-Star game. This is the Viking Update Show. He's John Krawczynski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune and TalkNorth.com. Best way to listen to this show or any show at the network is to subscribe to your favorite podcast app. Go to TalkNorth.com. Find shows you like. You will find something you like. Subscribe to the ones you like. And we have some news coming in the next couple of weeks about additions to our staff and some more live shows. Thanks for listening. We do appreciate it. So, by the way, we are presented to you by Giggly THC Beverages. I'll tell you more about them in a minute. And Onyx Hunt. Thanks to our other sponsors, including Clamshell Beach Resorts, Aquarius Home Services, Twill in the Edina Galleria. So let's start off just, the Wilfs. I mean, I know I ripped on them quite a bit the first couple of years. It just felt like they were doing what anything they heard in the media was good enough for them as a rationale for doing things. They kind of rushed to hire Brad Childress when there might have been better candidates out there. Feels like they have settled on the right formula for modern sports ownership. Provide the money, stay out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that what we see so often in ownership changes and in the new owners and everything else, there's a term for it. It's called new owner syndrome. And that's for a reason, is that these guys, they're all guys. They get into these positions and you're swept up in the euphoria of achieving this dream that you have of owning this team and being able to call shots. And you have a million people that are picking at you and saying, no, you got to go this way. No, you got to do this and all that. And it's a lot for someone to acclimate to. And I think especially this was the case. You remember this, Jim, when the Wolves first took over. Just a little anecdote. At one of the very first press conferences that they held, where you could just tell that Ziggy Wilf was not comfortable as a public speaker. There's nothing against that. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a white hot lens that is trained on you. And if you're not comfortable in those settings, it can really expose you. But so you could tell that right away. And then after the press conference, you have sort of these individual scrums that happen. And usually you break off. And if there's any questions you couldn't get to, or if you want to explore or have follow-ups, they're generally speaking, kind of the subjects will kind of linger off to the side, and several reporters will come around and lob stuff at them. And Ziggy Wilf, was asked one question, and then maybe 5 or 6 minutes later, another reporter who had just been talking to Mark Wilf comes over and asks Ziggy Wilf essentially the same question as the initial reporter did a few minutes earlier, just didn't know that it had already happened. And Ziggy said, yeah, you can just talk to him and get the quote that I just gave him. And they're different outlets. And it's just a recognition that they had no idea what life was like in the league. They had no idea, the being public figures, making decisions in this way, you're doing all of these things. And so, yeah, I do think that there were some mistakes made earlier, lessons learned. How they fired Mike Tice was not exactly clean and well executed. There's a lot of things that happened early on. You're like, these guys are brand new to this, and they have not figured it out yet. But long story short, now is that, to your point, yes, I think they've really settled in. Now they're very quiet. They're certainly not out in the media much and not quoted much, and I think that's by design. But they have really found out and figured out what is important to focus on. They have a group around them that they believe in and trust in, and that helps them make decisions and they go about guiding things. And I think when they first came in, they said they wanted to be like the Maras and the Rooneys in terms of their ownership style. And I think they have gotten closer and closer to that. as they went along. They are not Jerry Jones. They are not the out front, super involved micromanagers. They are quiet behind the scenes, supportive, but also there to make tough decisions when need be. And it really has established the organization as one that is very well thought of around the league. Again, just today came out those surveys again from the players, and I think the Vikings were number 2 behind the Dolphins in terms of like player supportive organizations, and that reputation is a huge help to their efforts to land free agents, to make hires in coaches and front office, all of those things. And the Wolves deserve credit for evolving over the years to where they are now as owners.
No doubt about it. And now they're better owners than the Maras.
Yeah, without question. I think that one thing, here's what I want to say. They absolutely are better owners than the Maras. They've been more successful. But I think what it really has come down to, and what it comes down to so often, especially with an ownership group like the Wilfs, if you are not going to be the micromanagers, if you're not going to be the pseudo GM, which I think is the right way to go about it, you have to hire the right people. And I think that, the Maras have made some decisions in their hirings with coaches and GMs of late that has not worked out. And the Wilfs have made the right hires, and credit to them for doing that. And that's how you get evaluated as owners. But certainly then you will also look at all the investments in the facilities, the way that they pay the players, like all of these things have definitely, if you're going to rank the ownership groups just in terms of overall effectiveness, I think it's got to be the Eagles at the top. There's several others that are out there that you look at as sort of gold standards, but the Vikings and the Wilfs are probably up in the, top 5-8 range of ownership groups in the league, just in terms of stability, leadership, support, their reputations, all of those things. Also,
ability to get facilities built. And listen, I'm not a big fan of billionaires getting taxpayer money to build stadiums, but it is the reality. And if you're going to do it right. And they build a great football stadium and a great football facility.
Yes, no question. I mean, that was an incredible amount of money that was spent on US Bank Stadium, but they pulled it off and to a remarkable degree. And you look at that, that's easier said than done, is what I would say, because I think that if you look at I've never been to MetLife Stadium in New York.
It's horrible.
But it's terrible from what I've heard. Not terrible. It's not good.
It's not it was built for $1 billion, however many years ago, and it feels like it was just tossed together.
Mm-hmm. So that's a big problem. I mean, and so there are those instances, around the league and around all the leagues of like, if you are going to solicit public money, and you better do it the right way, and you better make it worth every penny. And when you walk into US Bank Stadium, you say, yes, this, I see why this was so expensive. And there are very, very, very few nits to pick with that building and how it goes. And then the Egan facility, which thankfully there is no taxpayer money with that. But that thing is beautiful. It's like state of the art. It's absolutely everything that they need, and they're developing around it now too. And, it's going to be even better going forward. So they have invested their money wisely, and all of the resources that they have and that have been made available to them have been put to good use. And so that's really as much as you can ask for in that regard.
The other thing I've heard from people who work in the organization is that people at the top, the decision makers, the executives, the top coaches, that there is a real cohesiveness there. And that just doesn't always exist in pro sports, because pro sports tend to attract a lot of climbers, a lot of ambitious people who are fighting for space. And, from what I've heard, the Wilfs, Kwesi, O'Connell, Flores, key players, that there really is a good vibe around the building. And that obviously is a dramatic departure from what it was the last years in Mike Zimmer's tenure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like what you want in that regard is, I think what everyone wants is, if you're hired into a position of head coach or GM, you want your owner to hire you and then to back you, and essentially, you don't expect to just be like, hey, you're hired, this is your job, do whatever you want. I'm in the background. I trust you. Like, it's not blind faith, but there is an element of, I believe in you. I'm not going to get in the way, and I'm not going to be a nuisance for you. I'm going to be a resource for you. And I think that's what has been constantly described to me as far as who the Wilfs are as owners, is that they are there as resources. They are available, but they do not lord over the franchise. They do not just micromanage every decision, but they want to be involved. They want to know what's going on. They want to know why you're doing what you're doing. And then generally it's like, okay, all right, we believe in you. Let's go forward. At the end of the Zimmer tenure, it certainly was not a great environment at all. And I attribute more of that to the surliness of Mike Zimmer, and maybe to Rick Spielman's kind of inability to neutralize that, which is a big part of being a head coach or being a GM in this league. Is if you have a cranky head coach, you got to be able to kind of manage that situation better. But really, ultimately, it was Zimmer kind of just being an a-hole and really turning into someone who is very difficult to deal with. And so when it got to a point of no return, which is absolutely had by the end of that tenure, they went and did something about it. And they said, okay, enough is enough. We're doing this. And then they went and hired two guys in Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, in Kevin O'Connell, that seem predisposed to the opposite type of approach, where there's of course going to be drama, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be things that come up, and I think there have been things over the last couple of years that have needed to be addressed internally in those things, but they handle it in a professional way, and it doesn't turn into this icy cold toxic measuring contest, essentially. And so as owners, you should not expect them to be perfect and to never make mistakes, but you also should expect them to, once it gets to a point that needs to be addressed, or you did make a mistake, that you learn from it and you deal with it quickly and don't let it fester.
Agreed. Hey, this show is coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. Also want to let you know you should keep the good times rolling without the regrets. Giggly THC beverages are your go-to for bold flavor and smooth vibes, zero alcohol, no bad decisions, just THC-infused cocktails, seltzers, and teas packed with natural ingredients and performance-boosting superfoods like ashwagandha and ginseng. Find Giggly at more than 500 locations like Total Wine, MGM, and Cub Foods, or shop online at Giggly.com. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Use the code GIGLYNORTH, G-I-G-L-I North, for 50% off your first order. Giggly, sip smarter, feel better. Also want to let you know, for those of you who ice fishing is here, and it's time to hit the frozen water with OnX Fish. The Fish app is the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your confidence on ice. Use OnX Fish to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potentials. OnX Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. For a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota and Wisconsin, or go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice. And now here's our Talk North colleague, Michael Russo, for Clamshell Beach Resorts.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a Clamshell Beach Resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
Let's move on to football now. I was talking to Jeff Diamond on the Jeff Diamond Show on this network, the former Vikings general manager, and he brought up the fact that they have some decisions to make at running back. Everybody loves Aaron Jones as a player and as a guy. Is he good enough, dynamic enough, especially as he starts to add years, to be your lead back if you're going to win big games? Is he good enough if you support him with better supporting cast? Does Ty Chandler have a future? Is Cam Akers good enough to be your backup? Where do you stand on that whole group?
Yeah, it's a tough one, Jim, to really kind of come to some sort of grand conclusion, because I love Aaron Jones. I think his teammates, the coaching staff, both Jones and Akers seem to be just like the approval ratings through the roof. Like everyone really respects their work ethic. Everyone respects how they go about their business, who they are as people, also what they can do and what they're capable of as players. But at what you do wonder, especially with Jones getting later in the age with injuries that have been an issue, is how much you invest in him to keep him here for another couple of years, another 1 year, what it is. And when you look at allocating your resources, what you do, because the one thing that I think that I truly believe, Jim, that these guys learned from a couple of years ago when they went into the season with Alexander Madison as their lead back, that they had underestimated the importance of the running back position. And that has only changed and gotten more important over the last year. We are seeing the running back come more into vogue again and be utilized to a higher degree, by offenses all over the league than it had been in the previous 5, 8, 10 years, really. So I think that the Vikings have a good understanding that they cannot just have some sort of unremarkable plow horse back and expect to still be a really good offense. So they need talent there. I am of the belief that over the long haul, they need someone else. Whether it's you draft someone or who it is, I just think that they're going to need someone that is going to be more dynamic and is going to be healthier and more consistent than Jones and Akers. But in the meantime, until they get to that point, I want to have real options on the table. So if you don't have that person in the draft or in free agency, like I feel like you have to bring back both of them, because I think they complement each other well, and I think that they are still good enough to be threats in the offense. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can't make the case that Aaron Jones is as good as the best running backs in the league. Saquon's all by himself. Derrick Henry is almost as good as Saquon. There's some great backs in the league right now. The Packers found themselves one of them. But I do think he fits. He certainly fits personality-wise. Skill set works very well here. He catches the ball well. He's smart. He can bust off a big play. He reads blocking really well. I would be inclined to keep Aaron Jones as my lead back. And then the question is Cam good enough to be your number two? Ty Chandler obviously has been a disappointment. Is Cam good enough to be your number two? I guess my feeling is I'm going to go back to before this year when the running backs really had dominant seasons and gave great value, and say, I guess I still am inclined to say they have enough other needs that they shouldn't spend their assets at running back when they have pretty good running backs.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's not like a dire need right now, but I think it also is like, man, if you could upgrade the position for relatively inexpensive, or relatively low investment, I would do it. If there's if some running back slips in the draft a little bit that they love, go for it. I wouldn't do it in the first round.
No.
But like, if you have one of those other 3 or 4 picks that they have in their draft and somebody gets to you and you're like, oh, okay. Like, we really think a lot of this guy. I would try for that. I sometimes view running back in the way that some people view quarterback in the draft, Jim, where like you'll hear some general managers and coaches say, I want to draft a quarterback every single year, whether it's, first round or 5th or 6th round or whatever, just because the position is so important that I'm going to keep taking bites at the apple until we get one. And so I feel that way about running back as well, is that for a different way, in that because the churn is so high at that position, where usually you get maybe 2, 3, 4 years out of a running back, and then you have to move forward with it because either A, he's too expensive, or B, he's ineffective, or C, he's injured. And so I want to just keep bringing guys in, because I agree with you. I think Ty Chandler is not that guy. I like the physical skill set, but it doesn't seem like he has given enough, at least shown enough yet, that says, okay, this guy could be a number 1 or 2 back going forward for the next 3 or 4 years. I don't feel that way. So go maybe in the draft, go draft another one and see if you can hit on him at a better way. And until you're just that door is gonna keep revolving. But while you have guys who are established, I like it, and I think it's good enough for status quo, but you better have a kind of a plan going forward after that, especially if Aaron Jones does have another season where he's missing games with injuries.
Yeah, agreed completely. I want to remind you, we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We wanted to hear more about Aquarius Home Services.
Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Time for a cold weather check-in. If your furnace sounds like sneakers tumbling in a dryer, it just might be time for a little TLC. Right now, enjoy $98 off any furnace repair with Aquarius. Give your home the warmth it's been not so subtly asking for. A worry-free furnace is just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended and keeping you cozy all winter long.
I also like to tell you about the place I shop. Twill in the Edina Galleria, the best men's clothing store in Minnesota, and it's just a men's clothing store. They're also trying to sell you tires and Tupperware. It's a specialty shop. You walk in there and you see clothes that Scott Dayton, the owner, proprietor, has picked out by hand. The guy travels around the world. He has belts he found being made in Vietnam. Everything's very specialized. You can go in there and you can buy just beautiful Italian suits. You can buy golf shorts. You can buy casual shoes. I just bought some dress shoes there in my last trip. What I'll highlight today is Peter Millar makes great golf shirts, great casual shirts. They look nice enough. You can wear them with a jacket. They wear well. They're made of athletic wear, so you can play golf in them very easily. They feel comfortable. And right now, a lot of those Peter Millar golf shirts are on sale for like 40% off. It's the best deal you're ever going to see on a brand that hardly ever gets discounted, if ever. So check out Twill in the Edina Galleria, which is a great shopping experience overall. Tell him we sent you. Chat some sports with Scott if he's in there. He's a great guy. He loves talking about Minnesota sports. Or check out twillmn.com. You can even sign up for their email alerts. And guess they only send one out like once every month or two. They're not going to spam you. But if there's a sale, they can let you know that way. So Kwesi still hadn't. You and I did a kind of a long piece a few weeks back on the fact Kwesi still hadn't signed. I asked Jeff Diamond about it. He says he's really not concerned. He just thinks that there's really not a lot of urgency here. So he could see them either side just being kind of consumed with getting the fine print right. I don't know. Do you have a gut feeling on whether this is a problem or not?
Yeah, it's a hard one to read a little bit, just in terms of, my gut says that it's going to get done.
Yep.
That this may just be taking a little bit longer, or that it's just not, frankly, at the front of either's priority list as you kind of get into the off season and as you're going around and you're doing Senior Bowl stuff, or you're evaluating, or you're going to the combine, or you're starting to prepare for the draft, like all of those things. It's just possible that it's sort of like just hung up in the bureaucracy of it all. But I believe that a deal will get done. I think that, both sides want it to happen. And if both sides want it to happen, it will. That said, as we've talked about a little bit before on this, I mean, Kwesi is his own man. Like he is, he, I think, has a real kind of focus, or I would say not focus. I'm trying to think of the right word to say. He really has a sense of self-worth, and it's important to him that is recognized. And so, is there a possibility that there is some sort of hang up in the negotiations for compensation or incentives or other things in the deal that are a little bit harder to work through right now? It's possible. I don't know that to be the truth. I'm just kind of looking and speculating based on the lack of a deal so far. But I do know that, that Kwesi has a unique sort of way that he moves in the world and the way that he kind of looks at himself. He's an incredibly proud dude. And so, I'm not ruling out that there's some haggling that is going on behind the scenes, but ultimately I do think they'll get to a spot, that they want to get to, and something will be done. But until that happens, I guess you just got to kind of, wonder if it will.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. Last topic for today. The NFL basically has gone away from playing actual football at the Pro Bowl weekend. The NBA, you and I talked about it. There were some good things about the new format. There were also some bad things about their new format. Hockey basically is their best All-Star game is not playing an All-Star game. It's putting together a tournament of nations. What do you think the NFL should do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have found it sort of interesting. Like, the NBA All-Star Weekend just gets dragged, and I didn't like it. I thought it was not great. But I mean, it's absolutely just excoriated. And meanwhile, the NFL with the Pro Bowl has changed it into, flag football and kind of this, circus a little bit, and nobody really spends any time worrying about it. I think that we have gotten to a point in society, in sports fandom, where the novelty of these events is not the same as it was in the 80s, 90s, whatever. Back then there were, national TV was not a thing. It was really a lot harder to see all of the guys. So when you saw them on TV in an All-Star game, in a Pro Bowl, it's like, wow, look at all these guys on the same team at once. And I never get to see, this player or that player, more than a couple of times a month, play. And so, there was just a thirst for it that, nowadays with social media, with League Pass and Direct Ticket and, all of these things, like there's just so much exposure to all of these players that the simple fact of seeing them on the field together is not as attractive. So I think their influence is waning. The problem for the NBA is that it's still a major business thing for them in the middle of the season. I think that the NFL has sort of punted on that whole part of it. It's kind of nice to have. They don't need it. They make so much money other places. And so, I don't know what the answer is for the NFL. I think if it's a flag football game, it's a flag football game. I like the idea more so though, Jim, of not doing even like a game itself, but more of like the skills challenges. Like, let's put like all these dudes in, a 40-yard dash, the quarterbacks do that quarterback challenge where they're doing accuracy drills. You do like all these different sort of like just competitions, and just see these football players in kind of different environments and just have a little fun with it and go that way, because it doesn't make sense to have a full contact game. The flag football game itself to me was boring. I didn't really enjoy it at all. And the players just seemed to look at it as a joke, finally, rightfully so. So I would try and like see if you could breathe a little bit of competitiveness into, hey, here's a 3-point shooting contest. Here's a sprint thing. Here's a football throwing thing. Here's all sorts of different stuff just to kind of illustrate their athleticism and also, just have a little fun with it and just move on and make it something really light.
We are going to have a very interesting spring talking about the Minnesota Vikings. So check out this show frequently. Check out the Jeff Diamond's Vikings NFL Insider. Go to talknorth.com to check out those shows, the rest of the shows, including Michael Russo's hockey show. We do appreciate you listening, and we will keep you updated. We'll talk to you next week.